Have you ever wondered why mushrooms have such a strange nutritional reputation? Some people talk about mushrooms almost like medicine. Others dismiss them as nutritionally weak because they contain very little fat, not much carbohydrate, and only a modest amount of protein. So, what exactly are mushrooms contributing into the diet? Why do they feel so different from most other foods? And why do scientists keep finding strange compounds inside them that keep attracting attention? The answer begins with something very simple. Mushrooms are not really vegetables. They are fungi or fungi. And once you understand that, the whole story starts becoming much more interesting. Mushrooms belong to a completely different kingdom from plants. They evolved differently. They built themselves differently. Even their cell walls are different. Plant walls are built mainly around cellulose. Fungi, they are different. They use other compounds. The main one is chitin, the same tough structure that build insect shells and crustaceans. So when we eat mushrooms, you are eating something biologically quite unusual compared to ordinary plant foods. And that different biology helps explain why mushrooms contain compounds that do not sit neatly inside the usual nutrition conversation. But the strange part is this. If we look only at the nutritional label, mushrooms can initially seem disappointing. Low in fat, oh good. Very low in carbohydrate, also good depending on what you're looking for, but also very low in protein. Total energy often less than 200 kilojoules per 100 grams. So what exactly do they actually contain? Water. Fresh mushrooms are more than 90% water. So some people look at mushrooms and think, what's the big deal? There's hardly anything there. And honestly, if nutrition were only about calories and macronutrients, that summation would partly make sense. But nutrition is not just about protein, carbohydrate, or fat. Some foods are energetically dense, others are chemically dense. Mushrooms fall much into the second category. One of the most useful ways to think about mushrooms is this. They are chemically complicated despite being calorically light. That is very different from something like alcohol. Alcohol is high in calories but nutritionally sparse, empty calories, we call it. Mushrooms are almost the opposite, calorie empty, very low in calories but richly layered in chemistry. And most people already sense this without consciously considering it. Because mushrooms often feel satisfying in a way that many foods do not. They have texture, density, and savory depth. They make meals feel fuller, richer, and more substantial. Part of this comes from umami. Umami, often described as the fifth taste, alongside with sweet, salty, sour, and bitter. Umami is that deep, savory sensation people associate with slow cooked foods, broths, meat dishes, soy sauce, parmesan cheese, and certain fermented foods. Mushrooms naturally contain glutamate compounds and other flavor molecules that contribute strongly to this umami effect. That is one reason mushrooms are so useful in vegetarian cooking and mixed dishes. You can reduce some meat volume, add mushrooms, and the meal can still feel rich, savory, and satisfying. That matters because many diet foods fail psychologically. They may be low in calories, but they do not feel like real food. People feel deprived, unsatisfied, and hungry again. Mushrooms are unusual because they can help reduce calorie density without making the meal feel emotionally empty. And now we arrived at the part of the mushroom story where the internet starts becoming a little strange. Mushrooms contain unusual structural compounds and polysaccharides that scientists have become increasingly interested over recent decades. You may have heard terms like beta-glucans. These are complex carbohydrate structures found in fungal cell walls. Mushrooms also contain mannans, chitin, what we said earlier, and other fiber-like compounds that behave differently from simple starches or sugars. Some of these compounds appear capable of interacting with immune signaling pathways. Some may influence gut microbiome activity. Some behave like specialized fibers and may influence fermentation patterns inside the gut. But this is also where online discussion often becomes exaggerated. You'll hear phrases like immune superfood, natural cancer fighter, miracle medicinal mushroom, or detoxifying food. I think we need to slow down here a little. The phrase immune boosting is probably one of the most oversimplified phrases in modern nutrition. The immune system is not a car engine where you simply press a button and increase power. Sometimes overactivation is harmful. Sometimes regulation matters more than stimulation. So, the calmer and more balanced way to look at this is that certain mushroom compounds appear biologically active and scientifically interesting, but the clinical meaning is still being worked out. That is still worth knowing, especially because the gut microbiome in the gut is not just a digestive tube. It is a huge biological ecosystem interacting with metabolism, immune function, appetite signaling, inflammation, and even with the brain. Fungal compounds may participate in that ecosystem in ways we're still trying to understand. By the way, if you enjoy this sort of balanced, evidence based health discussion without exaggerated hype that often surrounds nutrition online, you may find this channel useful. This is Dr. Chris Ho, No Hype Health Talk. Now, there is one mushroom compound that researchers keep returning to with unusual scientific interest: ergothioneine. Mushrooms are one of the richest dietary sources. The interesting part is that humans do not make much, if any, ergothioneine. We get it mainly from food, and the body appears to have a specific transporter that helps to absorb and move it into tissues. Why does that matter? Because ergothioneine seem to accumulate more in places where cells are facing oxidative stress or high metabolic activity. Researchers have looked at possible roles in cell protection, mitochondrial stress, inflammation, vascular health, and brain aging. That is why you sometimes see people making anti-aging or brain health claims around mushrooms. But this is exactly where we need to stay careful. Interesting biology is not the same as proven clinical benefit. Ergothioneine may be one reason mushrooms remain scientifically interesting, but it does not prove anything close to having miracle anti-aging effects or magical health benefits. Then there is vitamin D. Some mushrooms can actually produce vitamin D after exposure to ultraviolet light. I covered that practical trick in a separate video called Activate Vitamin D in Mushrooms, the simple trick most people don't know. In a way, mushroom behaves a little like human skin here. UV exposure stimulates vitamin D formation. However, vitamin D2 is not identical to vitamin D3, and I do not want people to suddenly think that mushrooms can replace all other vitamin strategies. But it is still nutritionally interesting, especially because mushrooms also contain other micronutrients, such as selenium, copper, potassium, and various vitamin B. So, where do mushrooms become most useful in real life? Not as supplement mythology, but a practical food. They add to the flavor, texture, bulk, and savory satisfaction without adding many calories. That combination is especially relevant after middle age, where appetite management and energy balance become harder. Many highly processed foods are engineered to deliver enormous calories without lasting satiety. Mushrooms often move in the opposite direction. They help dilute calorie density while preserving meal satisfaction. You can add mushroom into soups, omelets, stir fries, pasta sauces, meat dishes, casseroles, and mixed meals. The dish can still feel rich and substantial, but the overall calorie load may be lower. I will also show you a very simple nutritious mushroom dish in a separate short video. Something quick to prepare, easy to whip up, no fancy cooking, just a practical way to use mushroom for flavor, texture, savory satisfaction, and nutrition. That practical role matters more than many of the dramatic online health claims. We should still be careful not to confuse interesting laboratory findings, small preliminary studies, or animal experiments with strong proven clinical outcomes in humans. Interesting science is one thing, commercial wellness marketing is another. This does not mean mushroom research is nonsense. Some of it is genuinely worth following, but there is a very big gap between scientifically interesting and proven major health effect. Unfortunately, the gap is where modern wellness marketing often lives. So, where does all this leave us? I think mushrooms are best understood not as miracle foods, and certainly not as nutritionally empty foods. They are not a protein powerhouse, they are not an energy powerhouse. Their value sits elsewhere in flavor, low calorie density, useful micronutrients, and unusual fungal chemistry. That is why mushrooms continue to fascinate people, because underneath something simple sits quietly on the same dinner plate is an organism that is still in many ways scientifically mysterious.